Welcome to the Rich Outdoors, where we break down the tips, tactics, and strategies of hunting's greats to not only help you become better hunters, but to motivate and inspire you between hunting adventures. For more about us, including additional resources on our guests and links to everything we cover in the interview, check out therichoutdoors.net. Well, hello, and welcome to the Rich Outdoors Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Cody Rich, and this week's guest, Mr. Shane Dorian, pro surfer turned bow hunter. Well, I guess he's still a professional surfer, but he's definitely caught the bow hunting bug and has found a love for hunting, that we all kind of share. Shane found bow hunting kind of late in life after he had a lot of success in his surfing career. And we talk a lot about both his surfing career as well as his hunting life and kind of the stuff that he loves about hunting. Shane is a very well-rounded guy with a lot of life experience, and I had an absolute blast talking to him. But before we get into the conversation with Shane Dorian, I got to give an iTunes 5-star shout out to Loaded Shotgun, who writes, "This is the most informative podcast on hunting on iTunes. It has amazing guests and even better content. This podcast is directly responsible for me booking my first elk hunt later this year. Thanks, Cody. Aaron Zodi." Well, thanks, Aaron. That is awesome to hear. I truly wish you the best on your elk hunt. And that's pretty awesome to see someone going on their first elk hunt. I think it's one of the coolest hunts you can go on. So I hope you have success and get hooked. And also, we're going to hook you up with that Primos package, which is perfect for your first elk hunt. So shoot me an email and we'll get you that package. We're giving away that Primos elk calls, and it's got a signed copy of the newest elk hunting DVD from Primos. Definitely not by me, but someone more important like Will Primos. So shoot me an email and we'll get that package sent out to you. You can start practicing on elk calls and get ready to call on a big old bull. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation that I had with Shane Dorian. I know I did. He's such a great guy, a cool dude, and has a great outlook on life. Enjoy the show, guys. Mr. Shane Dorian, welcome to the podcast. You're a pro surfer, bow hunter extraordinaire. So I'm excited to pick your brain a little bit.
Right on, man. Thanks for having me.
So when you introduce yourself and people ask what you do, what's your explanation, or how do you explain what you do to people?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I guess it just depends on who would be asking me. For most people, they don't even really realize that that pro surfing would be a job. And for me, it really doesn't feel like I have a job, so to speak. I just do what I love for a living. And but yeah, surfing is somehow my job. And but I love bow hunting as well. And I spend most of my free time bow hunting when I'm not in the ocean.
Yeah, it seems like, bow hunting is kind of taking up a big chunk of your life now, and that's kind of cool to see you transition from, being such a big-time surfer and into the bow hunting world.
Oh man, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's probably like the number one thing that I really like to do when I'm not surfing or hanging with my family. I have two young kids, and like most of us dads who have a job, it's a balance between working and doing what you love and making a lot of time for your family. So that's definitely the case for me. I'm always gone traveling for my work. I travel probably half the weeks of the year. A lot of times I'm out of the country, really far away. And then, when I get home, I like spending a lot of time with my family, and then I like to carve out a bit of time for hunting as well.
That's awesome, man. I want to dive into kind of how you got into hunting, because it was later in life that you did so. But first, I want to back up. You grew up on Hawaii, and I guess it's no surprise to some people that you became a pro surfer. But how did growing up in Hawaii, and how did surfing all the time, and how did you get into basically professional surfing?
Oh, I was sort of born into it, I guess. I was born and raised in Hawaii, and my parents had a little restaurant that was right on the ocean. And so I basically grew up at that restaurant when my parents were working every day, and there was a little beach right there. And so I grew up, learning how to swim. As soon as I could learn how to walk, I was learning how to swim, and, I was fishing every day and swimming every day. And when there was waves, I was, body surfing and bodyboarding, and I eventually started surfing. So it was just sort of like a natural evolution that I think most kids experience that grow up in Hawaii.
Was there like a time? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, and then yeah, I guess it was a situation where I know exactly how it worked. I just ended up really falling in love with surfing. I wanted to surf, during every waking moment, and took up all of my time in class. Every time I was, in school or taking a test or whatever it was, I was always thinking about what the waves were like, or how I wanted to, like what stuff I wanted to work on after school when I finally got to go surf. And, I ended up, starting to compete and liking that as well. And it was just one of those things that kind of like led me on a path to becoming a pro surfer.
Was there ever a time where you kind of battled with that want to chase your dreams versus go the kind of quote unquote path that everyone else thinks you should go? I mean, a lot of people battle with, this obsession, whatever it may be, say surfing, say hunting, a lot of kids, that's all they want to do. How did you ever have that battle within yourself of, what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Oh yeah. It's, the concept of being a professional surfer is a lot different, today than it was back then. For me, I didn't even know it was a possibility until I was probably 15 years old. And so I never really worked towards becoming a pro surfer until I was like really into my teens. I just surfed because I loved it. That's all I wanted to do. And, all of my friends surfed, and that's just how I wanted to spend my days. And then I got to the point when I graduated high school, and I didn't have like a really, amazing amateur career. And I wasn't like a shoo-in to become a successful pro surfer. And so for me, it was one of those things where I'm like, hey, I'm going to give this, I really, really would love to do this for a living. But it's a little bit of a long shot. And, if I'm probably going to give myself a year or two. And then if I don't make it as a pro surfer, I'm going to go to school and go to college, or, I was either going to go to college or, try to become a fireman.
Ironically. That's funny.
Yeah.
I was the same way. I mean, all I wanted to do was hunt. It's all I wanted to do. It's all I thought about. My mom was all about it, and she really helped me. I mean, she would drop me off, and I'd hunt on my own all the time. And that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to become a guide, and so my mom actually pushed me. It's like, you can become a guide if you want, but first you need to go to school. And so, I had a lot of firefighting background. And so that was kind of like the only other option that I saw. You don't see a lot of options when you're young. And so, I was pushed to go to school. Were your parents supportive of that decision to, hey, do what you love, or how did they approach it?
Yeah. My mom was really, really supportive of me. She would drive me to the beach. She would drive me all over the island for different competitions. She was always having bake sales and car washes and trying to raise money to get me to, to get off the island and go to different competitions over in California or over on the different islands. And so she worked super hard to support my dream. And that is something I'm extremely grateful for. My dad was supportive, but he was sort of inactive in the whole situation. But it wasn't like a situation where they really, really needed me to go to college for some reason. Mm. They just wanted me to, to grow up to be happy and to be, just a good person. I guess it was the main priority in my house. And, so it wasn't a situation where they're like, hey, you got to go to college if you want to be a pro surfer. That's fine and everything, but you have to go to college first. So, there was a thing where as soon as I graduated high school, I was like, I either have to make it as a pro surfer, or I'm going to go back to college.
Yeah. So was there a time, once you cross that line, you say, okay, I'm going to give it 2 years to become a pro surfer. How did your mindset change about it? A lot of times as a kid, you do this for fun and you get really good. once you decided that, hey, I need to make a career of this, how did your mindset shift, and how did you kind of train to get to where you wanted to be?
Well, just to put it into context, it's a lot different now than it was then. These days, when it's looking likely that you're going to become a pro surfer, when you're a kid, there's scouts, there's agents, there's like a whole industry and infrastructure put in place to kind of groom like the younger talent these days from the time they're 9 or 10 years old. If they're like a full on surfing savant, or they have a ton of talent at an early age, they have a travel fund. They don't have to pay for any of the contests. They don't have to pay for travel. They're supported. They get put in programs. They get sent on trips to exotic locations or picked up at airports. They have someone traveling with them. So it's become sort of a big business these days. And when I was a kid, it wasn't like that. I would sleep on floors. I had a job when I was 15, when I first got my work permit when I was 15, and became a busboy to basically chase my dream. I worked every single day after school in a restaurant. And I wake up super early, get my homework done, try and surf before school, and then I had to work at night again after school. So it's the things have just really changed. And so for me, I had to work really, really hard to become a pro surfer. And then when I graduated high school and started to really actively pursue it, it really started slowly. Like the first year, I had barely any sponsorship. I wasn't really doing great in events. And it sort of started slow, and then it started to pick up. And I picked up some sponsorships, and I started doing well in contests. And then I qualified for basically it's the world tour of surfing, which is similar to like golf, where you go to all these different locations and compete. So I did that, and it ended up working out. I never went back to my dream of becoming a fireman or going back to school.
I want to get in later and talk about your kid and how he's getting into hunting and all these different things that he's working on. But when you say that, do you think that changes, or do you think it has an effect on kids that are growing up in this big money industry these days, and how they can approach things? Or what's your thoughts on that? I mean, your kid, he's big into skating, and it's looking like that route. How do you treat that differently from trying to instill work ethic and like having to work for it like you did? I mean, what's your thoughts on that? That's something I think about a lot, and I'm pretty actively involved in mentoring younger surfers that are coming up through some of through some of the sponsorships I have. I'm actively going on trips. In about a week, I'm flying to Bali for 2 weeks to basically be a mentor for some up and coming amateur surfers. I'm hanging with them in a house for 2 weeks, and just trying to get them like up to the next level. And so I'm part of that infrastructure now for kids, but it's really hard. I'm kind of torn because it's there's like sort of like no going back to how it was before, where kids really had to work super hard, and you still have to work super hard to make it. Don't get me wrong. But it looks a lot different now if you have a lot of talent. And I almost feel bad for the kids these days, because they don't really know what it's like to have that struggle. It's either they make it or they don't, it's still really tough to make it. But they don't have that same struggle like you used to. Yeah, and I guess the flip side, the kids that are growing up and trying to become professional in any sport these days, they have a lot of competition. I mean, there's a ton of kids, everything's more global. So we see what everyone's doing. Growing up in, say, a small town, you may be the best, and it instills a lot of confidence. Whereas now you're growing up on a world scale, whether it be surfing, whether it be hunting, whether it be anything. So, kids these days do have their own struggles, I suppose, because the competition is so thick.
Yeah, for sure. It is. Like whenever you're talking about a job that is extremely desirable and everybody wants, there's going to be an insane amount of competition. I mean, think of all the people who want to become a professional hunter and in the world. Think of all the kids who are growing up with a bow in their hand or a gun in their hand, and they're like, "Man, I would love to do this for a living." But there's only one Lee and Tiffany. There's only there's only there's only a few people that are actually like really doing it. So it's like it's very similar to that in surfing where it's really, really top heavy. A lot of the sponsorship dollars are all at the very, very top. And there's a lot of guys that are really struggling to make it. And then, like a ton of kids who look like they have all the ingredients to really make it to the top. And they ended up like, they end up not becoming pro surfers. And that's a really difficult thing for someone who was raised, to become a pro surfer. Like a lot of these kids' parents are like moving from all these different countries and different cities, and they're moving to Southern California or the North Shore of Oahu and a lot of these places that are like essentially surfing meccas, to really pursue that for their kids. And they end up going to homeschool and getting tutored and spending a ton of time and money on basically trying to get their kids to become pro surfers. And, you really can't blame the parents for wanting the best for their kids and for trying really hard to try and support their dream. But it gets really sticky when the kids don't make it.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And it's so complicated because, take hunting, for instance. This is a hunting podcast. You have, when you look at it from the bottom and you're a kid who wants to be a pro hunter and you see these guys who are just continuously going on sheep hunts, and it doesn't matter what, expensive hunts, and the money that's involved to get at that level, it seems unattainable from a kid, growing up in a small town. Is like, this is what I want to do. There's just so much money thrown at the industry. That can be very tough.
Oh yeah, it is for sure. And it's there, and there's a lot of, there's a lot of things to talk about when you're talking about hunting. It's sort of new to me. I'm a little bit new to the hunting world. I grew up a total non-hunter. I grew up fishing a lot, spear fishing and pole fishing when I was a little kid, and all of my friends are fishermen and spear fishermen. And then I had a lot of friends who are hunters as well, but it was real grassroots here in Hawaii. Like no one in Hawaii is really thinking of becoming a professional hunter. And especially when I was a kid, everyone just did it for sustenance. Everyone just did it so they'd have something to eat and just because they love being in the mountains. But things have definitely changed with all of the network shows with all of the hundreds of hunting television shows, and all the magazines and all that stuff. And it's, it's difficult. I almost feel, is funny because everybody wants to become a professional hunter and be able to hunt for a living. But at the same time, you really want to maintain that passion for what you do. And, if I had the opportunity to when I'm done with surfing to hunt for a living, that sounds really good on paper. But my biggest fear is losing my love for hunting. Because if I have 6 hours free, I'm guaranteed gonna throw my bow in my truck and drive to somewhere I want to go hunt and walk in the mountains for 6 hours. And that's what I love to do. And there's a lot of people who hunt for a living that probably just wouldn't do that anymore because it sort of becomes work for them.
Yeah, they see the dollars. A lot of people have asked me about filming hunts, and to me, there's hunts I would film, but to me, bow hunting, in September, it ruins it for me. I don't want a camera following around, and there's nothing against those who do, and there's people who, absolutely, that's what they love. But I think there is a certain aspect of it that you lose once you put dollar signs on that activity, and it changes it for you, and it becomes hard to get away. And, we use hunting as a way to get away from life and kind of step into our own brain for a half a second and really do some deep thinking. And when that becomes monetized, it's very hard to do that. And you see dollar signs and you see deadlines, and now it just becomes a job, and that's always tough.
Yeah. And there are hunters out there, and you watch some of those shows, and they're so calm in the moment. There's like a 350 bull sitting at 15 yards, and you can see the guy just draw back, totally relax, make the shot, and there's the bull. It's just a perfect shot, and you could tell that excitement is lost. Where if there's a bull at 15 yards, I might shoot right over the thing's back and I have a heart attack. And I'm happy about that. That makes me happy that I freak out and get buck fever and flip out and make terrible shots. When I lose all that, I don't think I'll have the same sort of passion and excitement for bow hunting as I do now. And it's for me, it's, I don't know. I really worry about that because I know guys who who surf for a living and they end up like sort of losing that passion for surfing. Yeah, it's sort of difficult. The other thing about hunting is a lot of those fancy hunts. I've done a lot of different hunting. I hunt at home with my friends who do a lot of backyard hunting or hunting on a friend's place and just going hunting for the day or for multi-day hunts in different areas just with your buddies. Like let's go and just have a good time and get some meat and sit around the fire and just do mellow, like those sort of hunts, or do like a backcountry do-it-yourself elk hunt where you get an out-of-state tag for Colorado, fly there, really not know what's going on, not really know what's happening in those areas, or don't do that much research, and you just kind of wing it and go just for the experience of going hunting with your buddies. And then I've also done the kind of hunts that are like, you get a really killer landowner tag where there's going to be, there's going to be some giant animals walking around, and you're hunting with people who are really used to those kind of hunts. And I have no problem with big animals. They're great. They're fantastic. I love seeing beautiful bulls and giant bucks and all that stuff, and nothing beats that. But at the same time, those kind of hunts that are just, like you and your buddies, like it could be like a cow elk hunt, or, like a doe hunt, or hunting pigs, out in Hawaii or whatever. And you still have such a good time. It doesn't matter whether it's a fancy hunt or a backyard hunt. I think hunting is, should be awesome no matter what you're doing.
You're so right. I mean, there's so many different aspects to hunting. Like you said, there's different types. And I hate that we try to put labels on a person per type of hunt. I love to go hang out with my friends and shoot carp or do stuff that's just, a local hunt. I love to go on backcountry hunts, and I love to travel to some place I've never been before. So they're all good and they're all great. And there's no reason to label, like you said, I'm sure you love doing the little surfing just around the house or the big waves. I mean, that's kind of your thing.
Oh,
so
yeah.
There's all different types. And I hate that we try to label someone a backcountry hunter or a whitetail hunter or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same. It's funny because I can't relate to gun hunting at all. Like I shot the way I got into hunting was I was having problems on the property that I got here in Hawaii, up in the mountains. There was a ton of pigs coming in, and they were like ripping everything up that I would plant. And I didn't have a hunting background, and my buddy gave me a shotgun, and he said, "Hey, if you shoot a couple pigs with this, I think the pigs will mellow out and not come back for a while." So I actually did that. I shot one with a gun, and I immediately sort of knew that the gun hunting thing wasn't my thing. And so I gave the gun back, and I found bow hunting soon after that. And I have a lot of friends who hunt with guns, and they love it. And I have a lot of friends who hunt with bows and guns, and they're hardcore hunters, and they love it. And the excitement of hunting is there for them. But I'm not into gun hunting myself. But at the same time, I don't think it's a bad thing or a good thing or anything, as long as people are following the rules and not breaking any laws and not hurting anybody and enjoying the hunt. It's all good with me.
Yeah. So you started out, hunting pigs in your backyard mainly as a nuisance to get rid of them. When did it click for you and you knew like this was this new obsession that you had to entertain?
Oh, it was kind of instantaneous, really. My neighbor was a bow hunter. I realized, firstly, I realized that the gun hunting thing wasn't for me, and my neighbor had an extra bow, so I'd go over to his house and have a couple of beers and shoot his target with his extra bow. And as soon as I could group some arrows at 20 yards, he said, "Hey, let's go hunting for pigs." And so he took me hunting, and we saw a bunch of pigs that came right in real close on his property, which is right next to my house, and I totally blew it. I made a bunch of noise with the arrow falling off the rest, and I didn't even get the full draw, but it was so exciting to have those animals so close and, being so quiet and I don't know. There was something about hunting with a bow that seemed so sort of primitive and that I really liked. And I love the idea of just being completely quiet. Like nobody needs to know that you're out there hunting, even if you're, you could be right next door. So, I love that aspect of it. And the next day when the little bow shop by my house opened up, I went and bought a used Matthews and a bunch of really terrible arrows and a bunch of like mismatched broadheads that were different grains. I had no idea what I was doing. And I started building tree stands all around my house in the forest. And, it was just a lot of fun. I got really into it. And then started realizing I had some friends who were really into bow hunting. And then they started taking me on sheep hunts up in the mountains where I live and doing some rad, like, stuff where you're, learning how to spot and stalk animals and like learning about all the different sort of different aspects of bow hunting.
So did you get a hunt with Pedro while he was over there?
Yeah. So, it was funny because me and Pedro have, a couple mutual friends in Australia. And so I was actually surfing big waves in France, and Pedro was following me on social media and realized I was pretty close to where he lived. And so he reached out to our mutual friends in Australia, got my email address, and invited me for a hunt after my France trip. I wasn't able to meet up with them. Yeah, so he said, hey, you're in France. You're only an hour away. Why don't you come down? I got an extra bow, and I'll take you hunting. It's so cool for him to offer that, and I didn't have time to go then. But I told him, I said, hey, anytime you're in Hawaii, for sure look me up. So about a year later, he was moving to Hawaii, and I set him up for some good hunting over on Maui, and he ended up moving to Maui for about a year, and we ended up hunting a little bit over on Maui, and then he came to visit me where I live as well.
That's awesome. He's a great guy. I had him on the podcast when we first got going about a year ago, and we've kind of stayed in touch ever since. He's a great guy and really super cool dude.
He is. Yeah, it's neat. I love hunting with people who sort of grew up hunting and have a ton of hunting experience. I have a couple friends who, sort of grew up with a bow in their hand and who had parents and grandparents who were hardcore bow hunters. And it's so much fun for me as sort of like a relative rookie to hunt with people who are sort of masters of, I consider them like masters of bow hunting. It's amazing when you see these guys that have so much experience and seem to always make the right call. And it's fun for me. I try to sponge it up as much as I can and, hunt with really experienced guys whenever I get the chance.
So I gotta ask you, it seems to me a guy who faces ginormous waves like yourself would have no problem in the face of even a screaming elk. So how do those correlate, and how do you kind of overcome those fears?
Oh man, it's funny because I get buck fever on does, like literally. I get, like, if I see a doe, I get really, really excited. Like, I want to make the shot so bad, it's not it's never like just a doe to me. I don't know. It's just, I guess it's just really exciting to me. I don't know if it's just still so new or what it is, but I don't know. Like I've sort of lost that with surfing unless the waves are really heavy or really big, but with hunting, it's like, if it's, I don't know. I hate to admit it, but especially if it's like a boar with big chops or a buck with big antlers, I totally get that buck fever thing going on.
So do you have a system for, specifically, I would say within like big waves, do you have a system for overcoming fear or how, what's the self-talk when you're going into a situation where you're facing a giant wave? What's the self-talk to kind of talk yourself through that fear?
I don't do any of that when I'm surfing. It's all instinct. For me, I grew up surfing, like relatively big waves because, when you're a kid, a head high wave is big. And then you go from, a 3-foot wave to a 4-foot wave to a 5-foot wave to a 6-foot wave. And slowly over time, you just get more and more experience surfing big waves. And, I don't know. I sort of like rely on my experience and all of the days and all of the waves and all of the sessions I've had up to that point. And I just sort of like go into a weird little, like sort of like meditative mind space when I'm surfing really big waves. I'm hardly even, I don't know. A lot of times it happens. It just happens all naturally, I guess. And I think that's probably what people with a ton of experience, with bow hunting, that's probably how they are in the moment. When there is a big giant screaming elk, they just totally go into the zone and make the shot and execute it. And, it's all in a day's work to them.
Do you think you'll ever be that way with hunting?
Oh man, I don't know. I sort of hope not. Just because I love how excited I get. I'll scream up and down and, freak out, over, an experience that some people wouldn't even think twice about. I should be over it by now, because I probably, even though I've only been hunting for like maybe 13 years, I've probably done more hunting than a lot of people who have hunted a whole lifetime.
Oh yeah.
I've only been hunting for 13 years, but I probably go through, this is kind of scary, probably 8 to 10 dozen arrows a year.
Wow.
That's a lot, right?
That's a lot. That's impressive.
Yeah.
In a good way, right?
Well, not really that impressive, but we just have no hunting season in Hawaii. And we have, the number of animals that we have, such healthy populations, and with most of the animals here, and most of them are considered pests. And some of them are really delicious. So, I will kill every deer I possibly can, in most years. So a lot of years I'll kill 10 to 15 deer, and then I'll have a ton of opportunities that, like endless amounts of pigs and goats and sheep. So, for me, it's showing restraint and not shooting so many arrows all the time, because my freezer's full like 90% of the time. I'm giving away meat constantly.
Do you think you'll ever get tired of hunting around your house, or tired of shooting axis deer? It seems like you do a lot of it. You think that'll ever just kind of peter out, and you'll look for something new and the next thing?
Axis deer, no. That's like getting tired of women. It's like, it's their axis deer, for those who have never hunted axis deer. And I'm not talking about I'm talking free range axis deer. No fences, no corn feeders, no like full on pressured areas of that kind of axis. You got to come to Hawaii and hunt axis deer. They're incredibly addicting to hunt. They're so damn hard, but there's so many of them that you get opportunities, but you blow opportunities a lot, whether it's on the stalk or on the shot. It's funny, because I always hear like a guy like Cameron Haynes saying, like, okay, the last 10 arrows I shot, I got every single animal, or and people are proud of that, of course, and they should be. It's difficult for me to relate, because a lot of times when you're taking a shot at an axis deer at 35 yards or 40 yards, even if that animal is not alert, the animal will be in a completely different position by the time your arrow gets there. So even if you make a perfect shot, you might hit it a foot from where you're actually aiming it. And so it's very, very difficult to have a, I don't know how to explain it, other than like, any ego you might have with bow hunting is quickly checked when you're hunting, especially axis deer. I noticed they make a lot of people end up selling their bow and buying a gun.
My buddy was over there last year, and he hunted on Lanai, and he called me afterwards. I was supposed to go with him, and of course I got too busy, and I really kicked myself afterwards, because he's like, man, if you want to be a good bow hunter, just book 10 days in Hawaii and just hunt axis deer, because you go so many stalks, so many failed attempts, and like you just feel like you can't get it right. They're just so quick, they're so skittish, because like you said, they do get hunted almost every day of the year.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I would say your friend is right on the money. If you want to accelerate your learning curve with bow hunting, I would definitely come to Hawaii, where you have a ton of opportunities, especially with access deer, that any mistake you make, they will make you pay for it. But the awesome thing is you get really frustrated with yourself, throw your bow, throw a tantrum, whatever it is. And 15 minutes later, you might be on another stalk, So, it's a lot of fun for sure. And to answer your question, no, I don't think I could ever be sick of hunting axis deer. But it's funny because my friends on Lanai get super jealous of me for like shooting a small sow pig, going on a pig hunt for them is like, they would kill to go on a pig hunt or a sheep hunt where they, we have a lot of sheep where I live, or goats, and they would be like, man, I would love to go on a sheep hunt. That's like my dream hunt. And these guys hunt axis deer all year long. So
yeah,
I guess you sort of always sort of want to hunt what you don't have access to.
Oh, that's true. Even over here, people, they dream of hunting big mule deer, and, guys over here will dream of hunting, whitetails, big whitetails in Kansas. So yeah, you kind of, I don't know, it's that adventure, and like you were recently on a hunt with Remy in New Zealand, and how many people there's just dream of chasing deer in New Zealand. I don't know what is it about travel and hunting something new that humans are attracted to?
Oh man, it's I think number one is like the different terrain and the different animals. The area I hunted with Rennie was really, really cool. I never really hunted that sort of terrain exactly. He said it's really similar to like really high country areas in like Nevada, there's no bushes, there's no willows, there's no rocks. There's no trees. There's just sort of like rock outcroppings, and you're using sort of like the cliffs. It's sort of like high country mule deer in areas that are like above tree line where there's no bushes. There was hardly any grass where we were hunting these fallow bucks, and so it was really difficult. You really had to plan your stalk and really execute correctly. But yeah, it's so fun to get on a plane with your bow and to get excited and have a hunt booked on your calendar and be shooting your target every day, wearing the thing out, just anticipating that moment of truth when you finally get there, and you put in all the stalks and all the days, and then that moment of truth kind of presents itself, and you have to make the shot, whether it's in New Zealand or Utah or wherever it is.
Yeah, I think planning those hunts out, you get to think about it. It gives you something to work towards. There's so much appeal to it. You have a hunt that's in a year or even farther. Guys are booking sheep hunts in 5 years, and you really get to think about how great that sheep hunt's gonna be for years. If you go on a hunt, you get to experience it, but just that's one of the nice things about being human, I guess, is that you can kind of imagine what it's going to be like for that whole year before you go, and you're shooting your bow every day, and you dream about it. And then that moment comes and you get on a plane and it's like, oh man, here we go.
Yeah. Well, that's the dream, it's just that. And I think it's like that for surfing. Like people surf around their home all the time, but having like a surf trip booked to somewhere you've never been, to surf some wave that you've always dreamed about surfing, that's like the ultimate, and being able to go and do it with people you want to have that experience with is the best.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things it's kind of tough. I struggle with because I hunt for the meat 100%. I enjoy eating the meat, and it's hard to make that argument to someone else because take yourself for example, or for instance, you could fill your freezer 100 times over right where you live. Yet we still have this urge to go hunt things, and it's not because you want to kill some other animal. It's not because you want the rack of some other animal. It's not in that aspect. It's more the aspect, you want to travel and explore and see new area. The same way for surfing, I suppose. Yeah,
the adventure hunts are for me the most memorable hunts. I did a hunt. Me and my buddy from here in Hawaii. We planned to go to Colorado, and we went there. We went there for 3 years, and we ended up figuring out that this one area was pretty good, like relatively pretty good. And it was an over-the-counter, do-it-yourself sort of situation where we bought, out of state tags and just did it ourselves. We literally like rented a car at the airport and drove to the trailhead and went with our tags and walked as far as we possibly could in the craziest, steepest country ever. And on like day 7 of a 10-day hunt, I killed my bull. I didn't know how to call him. I didn't know what I was doing. So I ended up just stalking him like he was an axis deer, and ended up somehow getting a shot at the herd bull. And there was like 50 elk there, and shot him at like, I don't know, would have been like maybe 10 yards, 11 yards.
Oh, wow.
And it was just absolutely awesome. And then I packed that bull out basically by myself, because my friend still had his tag. He helped me clean it and shuttle it to camp, and then I packed it all out. And then on my last packing trip of packing meat back out and getting ice in the cooler, I walked back, and my friend called me on the radio and said he just killed a bull as well.
Oh, man, that's cool.
And so it was one of those situations where we both hunted on an over-the-counter, out-of-state tag, had no idea really what we were doing. We were both successful on bulls, and we killed them in really steep, gnarly country and had to walk really, really far. I honestly feel like it took years off my life. Like, that's how hardcore it was. And that hunt was probably the most memorable hunt I've ever had, because number one, I was with a really great friend of mine who I love spending time with. And it was just the whole adventure of really not knowing where we were going, and the terrain, the animals. It was all sort of new, and just that whole adventure aspect of hunting is something that is a real draw for me. Like, I'd rather do an adventure hunt over any hunt.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's those type of hunts that I feel I want to put that experience on someone, like someone who doesn't hunt. It's like you can't really explain that emotion. And I can listen to you tell that story, and I know exactly what that feels like, but you can't really explain that to anyone. And you just want to like put them in your brain for a minute and be like, you have no idea. Like, just imagine, or just be there for a second, and you'd be hooked.
Yeah, totally. And then, but some people aren't into that. And some people aren't into, like almost breaking yourself for the adventure and the hunt. I was that hunt I did with Remy. We hunted in a remote part of South Island, in a completely free range area where these animals get a ton of pressure from. They have to get eradicated by the surrounding ranches, and even on the ranch that we were hunting, they do a lot of eradication there, like aerial eradication, to keep the numbers down. So the animals are super skittish, and it's not like one of those fancy ranches that has that's super easy to hunt. And on the way there, we passed dozens of paddocks that had these like 600-inch red stags laying there right next to the fence, right next to the highway, with security guards guarding them. And they'd be like three or four of these monster red stags, all laying next to each other, just kicking back. And they're basically waiting for hunters to fly in to kill them in a fence.
That's so ridiculous.
And I mean that literally. Like, a lot of people in America, they see the pictures of those red stags. They have no idea that that's exactly how it happens. These animals are literally waiting for their hunter to show up, and then they get put in a truck and backed up into an area that is all fenced. And the back of the truck opens. They open the fence, and the animal walks out, and they're bought from a farmer. And then the animal walks out into this fenced area, and then the hunter flies in the next day. And that's exactly how it happens. We passed dozens of these places on the way to go hunting, and it was so strange to me that these guys are paying all this money when they could, instead of paying that $8,000 or $10,000, whatever it costs to go kill a big stag, you could go on like 5 or 6 rad, like do-it-yourself elk hunts for that same amount of money,
Yeah, but it's just that social media effect, man. They gotta have their bigger stag on their profile pic, and that's all it's about for them. I don't know.
Yeah, and I hate to judge, but I just can't relate to that at all.
No.
I love big antlers like most other people. That's awesome. I appreciate the like a mature animal and something with rad genetics. And of course they're majestic looking when they have a big rack on their head, but, at the cost of, you completely sacrificing all the best things about hunting when you do a hunt like that, in my opinion. Just the whole adventure aspect is completely gone. Doing it with people you really want to do it with is completely gone.
Yeah.
Knowing that you're shooting up farm animals is crazy. I don't know. It's hard to relate to that, and I just feel bad because those people are missing that kind of feeling that you get when you do like a hunt with your buddy in the backcountry, and you get an animal, pack it out for miles, and you gotta, you gotta like work against the clock to make sure the meat doesn't spoil. There are just so many different aspects to a rad backcountry hunt that I think are, I think they just make it like the best hunt out there.
Oh, hands down. I mean, I would pay money for experience over anything, really. I mean, I have no desire to own a brand new car, a brand new sports car. Like I would rather take that money, go to Canada, almost die 3 times, and get lost 4, and that would be like money well spent to me. Like even if I didn't kill anything, that's what I want. And I look at that on every hunt. It's like I think you do feel this pressure within the hunting industry to get it done, and to kill a bigger one. And I think you always gotta, really ask yourself why you're doing it, and is this true to who you are and what you want to do? And I don't know. I do think that some people they don't want to work that hard. They want the easy hunt that they get it done on the first day, man. And I think a lot of people about, the whole New Zealand thing, I think a lot of people lie to themselves, like, oh, well, this isn't a farmed hunt, and to each his own. I'm not going to bash it. If you want to do that, cool. It no appeal to me. Like you said, I don't know if I would go with Remy. That scares me. That guy's nuts. But him and I had talked about it quite a bit, and I'm excited to kind of I just want to take a one-way ticket to New Zealand and figure it out. And that's, even if I'm not successful, that's what I want to do. I want to go through that struggle. And that's kind of how he did it. He originally just bought a one-way ticket and said, I'm going to figure this out. So that's so cool to me. And that's what hunting is to me.
Well, and it's there for the taking in New Zealand. Once you pass all the stag ranches, you get to these like rad, giant public areas that, you can rent a vehicle and go as deep as you want through rivers up, for miles up these giant draws of these giant valleys. And, go hunt these super big mountain animals like the tahr and the chamois. Those things live in the most remote, gnarliest, vertical, high elevation areas that you just need to be super fit and like, if you can kill one of those things with your bow on public land, you are a badass bow hunter. Anybody I see, that does that, I was unsuccessful, but it just gave me such an appreciation for how hardcore you have to be and fit and mentally ready for, one of the gnarliest hunts there is. It must be similar to hunting like stone sheep or some sort of sheep in Alaska or something like that,
So are you hooked? You ready to go back and give it another try?
It's definitely a goal of mine. I think that, I think I need to probably for me to up my odds, I would need to get in better shape for the mountains, and also to probably become a better archer to be able to extend my effective range out a little bit for like the tahr. But I think we only had a couple days on the tahr, and I actually had one stalk that was going really well, but it ended up getting dark before I got a shot. So I think if I went there with 7 days or 10 days to really try to get a tahr, I think I would have a lot more rad encounters.
Yeah, no, I always try to do that. I think people these days, they try to book shorter and shorter hunts. And I get that life gets busy and we don't have as much time as we used to, but man, there's nothing better than having time. I hate when I'm on a hunt and it's rushed.
I agree. I'll spend as much time out there as I can possibly justify.
And then maybe just a little bit longer.
Well, I hate short hunts as well. I don't like that feeling that the end is near and I'm halfway through my hunt and I've only been here for 2 days. That's stressful to me. And that's the last thing I want to feel when I'm on a hunt is stress. I feel like I want to feel like I'm I'm out there, out in the woods and with like no real timeline,
Yeah. Do you, you had mentioned to Joe on his show when you're on there about doing some solo hunts. Do you do a lot of solo hunting?
I do. I do. I go through sort of, it sort of depends on what opportunities I get. Some years I get rad, invitations from friends to go hunting, and so I'll have to like allocate only a certain amount of time for hunting per year. But a lot of times I'll do solo hunts at home. And then I've done two backcountry solo hunts in Colorado for elk, which both were incredible, like really, really fun.
Yeah, you were talking about that before, and there's something about it, man. There's something about being by yourself and having some time to think. I enjoy hunting with friends, but again, it's just having all these different types of hunts. I think there's something very meditative, finding yourself in the backcountry and having to rely on only yourself, and kind of knowing in the back of your head that you got to get yourself out of this one.
Yeah, and there's no greater feeling than actually having success on a shot, on a stalk, on the hunt when you're not with one other person. I spent the first few years of my hunting life, I guess you could say, hunting with someone else, because I didn't really know what I was doing. So I was trying to learn as much as I could. So I would go hunting with other people that had more experience than I did, trying to accelerate my learning curve, trying to get better, and trying to become a more effective hunter. And then once I learned, then I really wanted to get it done by myself. I had this like obsession of like trying to get the animals when I was totally all alone. And I still love that. I love being by myself and having an animal on the ground and having to make that shot in the moment by myself, having to track it by myself, having to clean it by myself, having to pack it out by myself. I think that's the best.
Oh yeah, and there's so many emotions that go through that, and trying to make decisions. It's nice having someone to bounce ideas off of. But I've had some awesome hunts where I'm by myself and just trying to go through what to do. By yourself, no one to bounce ideas off of. And I think it's kind of like proving grounds. I feel like maybe that's why I enjoy it. I don't know. Yeah, it is. Well,
there's so many times when you're hunting with a buddy, and then all of a sudden a stalk presents itself and you're like, well, I should go to the right here. And he's like, no, you should go this way, around to the left, or whatever it is. And there's all those decisions to make. And when you don't have anybody there to bounce any ideas off of, whether it's when to draw or asking someone else to range for you or the route of the stalk, having to do all that stuff on your own, there's nothing more satisfying.
Yeah. So what's the most miserable hunt you've ever been on?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I actually avoid really miserable hunts, to be honest, but probably the most, I'm trying to think. I've been invited on hunts. I got invited to hunt water buffalo up in Australia, up in the northern part of the country. And I haven't gone yet because I'm kind of a wimp when it comes to like hardcore heat, especially. I don't like being hot when I hunt. I know that sounds really wimpy, but I love like being in like the high country where it's cool and sometimes freezing. And I'm not afraid of snow. I'm not afraid of rain, but I'm afraid of like swamp heat with like bugs and snakes and spiders, and you're walking barefoot through the water, and there's possible crocodiles, and it's 100+ degrees. That is scary to me. That like that feeling of like head to toe sweat all day long, even in first thing in the morning. I'm not positive if I'm hardcore enough for that. So that's a hunt I have yet to do. And my really good friend Adam has been trying to get me to come over to Australia to do it. And the hunt itself looks amazing, but I hate being totally soaking wet and cold. Once I was in Colorado by myself, and I was positive that there was going to be no rain, and I wanted to pack lighter. So of course I left my rain gear back in the pack, because when I woke up in the morning, an hour before sunlight, it was all stars, and the forecast was for no storms. So I didn't pack my rain gear. And of course, I was super far away from camp, and a torrential downpour happened, and I was soaked to the bone. It rained for about 2 hours. I was soaked to the bone. I had to walk back in the dark, and I was freezing cold. And that was quite miserable.
Yeah, but those are some of the best memories, though. I mean, I did a hunt in Idaho, and same thing. You know, forecast said 80, 90 all week, and it rained the entire time. And it was to the point where I had rain gear, but I would be 3 or 4 miles in, and you get on an elk, and you had to really know whether you're going to get a stalk, because you had to pull your rain gear off, which meant you were completely soaked to the bone. And so then you're going to freeze. So it's like, is this stalk going to work? What's the odds of this stalk working? Because if I get soaking wet, it means I got to go 4 miles back to camp. But I don't know. To me, those are awesome memories. They're miserable and suck at the time, but those are great memories.
Oh yeah, they suck at the time, but they are like those terrible moments, those miserable moments are awesome. Like when you look back at them, they're just no fun when you're actually walking and your feet are blistering up because your shoes are completely soaked and you got to walk 6 miles back to camp. But when you look back at the photos of your feet just looking like hamburger and you remember those memories, it's awesome.
I remember I was packing, and I shot this elk in Idaho, and we were just getting the first pack out, and it was probably midnight on the side of a mountain. Rain's coming sideways. I could have drowned and been less wet, and I was just laughing like this is as bad as it gets. I'm pretty sure right now. But when you look back, it's great memories, you know.
Yeah, it is.
I'm just terrified. You know, Adam and I were talking, and you know, I'm terrified of Australia because all the things they can kill you. And then he goes and tells me that he saw an eagle packing off a pig, and it was squealing. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go hunt with Adam. That sounds dangerous.
Yeah, he's hard as nails. That guy. He is. He's not that guy to complain when it starts raining and he has no rain gear. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, hopefully you get down to Australia and get to hunt with him. You know, I got a couple more questions for you. And one is one that I always ask guys, and I love to ask this question. And it's particularly interesting to your situation because you came into bow hunting later in life. But if you could go back and give yourself some advice, you know, in those early days, you know, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
First of all, you know, I wouldn't change a thing except finding bow hunting earlier would have been awesome. I remember all throughout my 20s when I was single, not married, no kids, and had a ton of time on my hands, and so I would go back and start hunting when I had no kids and when I wasn't married, because I just remember being I had so much time on my hands that I was actually bored a lot, where I was like, oh, what am I going to do right now? What am I going to do for the next 2 weeks? And now I never have those, you know, now I would give anything for 2 weeks. So I guess looking back on it, I wish I found bow hunting earlier for sure, because I would have had a lot more time and I would have done a lot more hunting. But there's a lot of time in the future. But you know, as far as going back and changing things, I don't think I would. I mean, I've had so much fun. I've had so much fun bow hunting and so many fun trips and hunts, and I've made so many hilarious mistakes and terrible mistakes, but they've all been part of the learning curve. And I don't know. I'm just having a ball.
Well, awesome, man. That's you got any big hunts coming up this year?
I hope I have a hunt. I have a really good friend that I've done some hunts with in the past, and we've been trying to get a mule deer hunt organized for years now. And it looks like we might be able to go to eastern Colorado in November to hunt what I've never hunted before, like the flat, like kind of like eastern plains in Colorado.
Yeah.
And it'd be for, you know, and it'd be for mule deer. So that's probably my number one animal that I want to hunt the most in the future are mule deer. I love them. There's something about them that's so fascinating. And so I'm really looking forward to that hunt. I hope it happens. And it's really difficult with my job because I don't have a typical job where I'm like, okay, from like November 1st to the 15th, I'm going to take some time off. It's like right in the middle of my peak season. So if the waves are big and I can't go on my hunt, I have to surf big waves, and which is fine and everything, but it's just a lot different. There's a lot of situations where I can't commit.
I don't think you're going to get a lot of sympathy from this crowd on that remark, because
no, I'm not looking for that. I'm not looking for sympathy, but I'm hoping for a flat spell during the mule deer hunt. Let's put it that way.
Well, awesome, man. Well, hopefully you get out there and catch the mule deer bug. It seems to addict some folks. So hopefully you catch it and get out there and get a big mule deer. Sounds like a fun hunt, man. Where can guys catch up with you and check out some of your hunts or check out some of your stuff?
I guess the only real social media I do is on Instagram. It's my name, ShaneDorian. And I do put a lot of hunting stuff on there. That's sort of it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing more hunts, and maybe I'll see you guys out in the field one day.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Hey, appreciate it, Shane, and best of luck this year, man.
Right on, Cody. Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show and maybe even picked up a few tips along the way. Join us right here every Thursday morning for more interviews and great hunting tips. And be sure to help us out by leaving a review on iTunes. For more information about this show and the rest of our guests, check out the show notes for links and additional resources on our website, www.therichoutdoors.net.